What's going on, Cody? How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good, man.
Yeah,
Could be
we're
better.
live in the field with you.
Good.
This is awesome.
This is new, right?
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
it. So for those of you guys tuning in, you might hear some bugs zapping in and out, and
Yeah.
Cody hopefully isn't gonna eat one while he's going on a rant later tonight.
Yeah.
But guys, we got some awesome news. We're gonna do a giveaway from Lone Wolf. Cody, thank you so much for jumping on and doing this. But we're gonna give away Cody's exact setup. So stay tuned. We're gonna get into that later in on the podcast and ask Cody why he's running his setup this year. And for one of you lucky listeners, you'll get in on this giveaway and hopefully kill you a giant buck with it. So what's going on, dude? Where do you mind disclosing where you're at, or do you want to keep it on the down low, or what?
I'm in Kansas. Everything
Okay,
is
cool.
everything is Kansas. Anytime somebody, hey, where are you hunting? Kansas. It used to be
Okay,
Missouri, but now it's harder. No, I'm in I'm in Illinois.
okay, I got you. And
Yeah.
you're on day 3, 4.
Yeah. So I'm pretty much like I kind of go with where the wind blows me during the season. This kick off the season. So I've been in the last like 4 days. I've actually hit 3 states. So I kind of like to get a feeler on everything. I got 3 pieces close to home in 3 different states that I'll like keep as my main focus, and I'll bounce back and forth between. So like, I mean, total distance, if I wanted to go from the furthest to the furthest, you're only talking 4 hours. So I can hunt a morning, out of state, and I can be in a different state for the evening. And I kind of actually, I live where I live right now because of that sole purpose. When I was like 18, I moved to this location specifically based off of hunting whitetail. So I like, and then, oh shit. And then there's even steps beyond that, then I have 2 other states I can hit that are just 2 hours further. And it's just kind of like, it's centrally located. And so I like to do that, man. I like to keep keep tabs on a couple different pieces, and yeah, and not running any cameras. Or early for me is really like take inventory, get intel, and just get your feet wet. So
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Will you ever do any glassing in any of these places, like during the summer, or do you not worry about it because you're so busy?
I don't do it. No, yeah, I should do a little more glassing. Is a really valuable tool. I Just to get inventory, right? So,
Yeah,
and also during season, like if I try, and this is something huge. I was actually just thinking about this the other day. For those guys who can't get out and hunt every night, if you can even squeeze a glassing session in, that's like sometimes better than even hunting. So
yeah,
like if you're like, oh man, you're one of those guys, woe is me, I can never hunt afternoons, I got to work, whatever, I'm a working man. Well, like, and you can't dip out. If you can just squeeze in that glassing mission, you could almost set yourself up for a better position to kill really easy.
yeah.
And you got to use whatever you can. So I think glassing in season super important. Um, and if you're not hitting those sits, because it's kind of like glassing's kind of like scouting.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. I
yeah,
did the same exact thing actually a couple days ago. I couldn't slip out in the evening, and they just cut this cornfield super early, which really pissed me off, if I'm being honest with you, man. Like, I pinned down this one deer, and I figured he was like, in this area. Had him like he would very rarely be on camera, but I just knew like, and I actually had an encounter with him. So I kind of like threw the camera out the window. I was like, look, I'm not even worried if I get another picture of him. I just want to get in there. So they cut the corn, glassed it, had a ton of other bucks in there. He didn't show, but I went in and scouted it yesterday, actually, just like to see if he's laying down sign. And I didn't find anything drastic or nothing like that. I figured as big as he is, he'd probably be laying down like, some good rubs or good scrapes, but didn't find much. So I don't know if he relocated or what, but to be continued. He's a buck I've never actually targeted because he's so old. And I always thought he had like a shit rack and like, just kind of wrote him off. And this year he threw on, he looks like a big muley buck, honestly. So
oh really?
I'm really excited. Yeah, man. He's probably like, he will definitely be the biggest body deer I've ever killed. And I think he's either 9 or 10 from just what I'm
Yeah,
guessing. But
the
yeah,
monarch.
so
Yeah,
yeah, it'd be
and he
fun.
and they don't always big deer don't always leave big sign either, man. So don't overlook the small stuff. It could
Yeah.
be him.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. And he's got these real weird rounded off brows, man. Like, so I feel like if he rubbed, like, it really wouldn't maybe put in those gouges, like some other bucks do.
Mm.
So might be something to look for. I don't know. Figured I'd get your input on it while I got you on here.
What's that? The location change?
No, no. Just get your input on like what you thought about, like a deer. You ever have like some bucks that
Oh,
you knew
dude,
of specifically that like
100%, man. Yeah, there's
yeah.
been. I mean, usually you can tell. I mean, if you got a 5.5-year-old buck, or even before that, three. I think the biggest jump a whitetail makes, and this is all speculation. I'm not claiming to be a biologist, and some people would argue me, but I think generally speaking, people overage deer. They think they're way older than they are, and the. I mean, some deer. Don't get me wrong. I think they found a doe that was like 20 years old or something. Or I don't know, but average, on an average term life, right? Especially for a buck, a rack buck, like dude, they don't live that long. There's a lot of things they got to survive, right? And
Yeah.
um, like being able to watch deer in like probably the most primo area of the country, which would be the Midwest for rack growth and just big size deer, right? They're major egg fed. They got everything they need, and I think the biggest jump they make is from 3.5 to 4.5, and like that's when you go from Um, you know, it's not uncommon around here for a 3.5-year-old deer to support a 150-inch rack or even a 160-inch rack, and I think when they have the genetics, the real world-class genetics, that jump to when they're an absolute mega giant is 3.5 to 4.5.
Yeah.
Um, and they can put on some more age and remain the same at 5.5. And but I think the massive jump, a lot of these big deer from the area, and even in the record books, um, for years, like you'd see these like crazy 220s or whatever, and like they'd be aged at 4.5 years old. So
Right.
it's like,
Yeah, that's crazy.
but anyway, so what I was getting at, real full circle, is normally you can tell by 4.5, like, he's never really going to be anything great. He might put on some size, whatever. But then every once in a while you get a kicker, you get like a kicker case where all of a sudden you got a 6.5-year-old buck that was like, maybe he was really healthy that off season and like just was in good shape, better shape than he's been in the past. And he just fucking like, kicks a drop tine or something.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
I think it had a lot to do with the rain. We had such a mild winter, and then we had a ton of rain all spring and all summer, like at least early summer.
yeah,
And
all the
I noticed a lot of deer around here, man, sporting huge racks. Like, and I'm like, damn, like it definitely seemed like that culmination. And I feel like that buck in particular kind of gave me the hunch. It's like, okay, man, those wet years, they really do seem to throw on a little bit more mass and a little more time length. And
I
I don't know.
I I think it's all 100% correlated to stress.
Okay.
And so and you got to think, and that's stress in all facets, right? So if a buck is not, if it's dry and he's not getting the water he needs, there's not the browse, like that's stress to the body, right? And if so that's why those harsher years, if the winter's really bad, that's stress. It's like just all these things accumulate. Now if you get good conditions, good water, low pressure, a healthy deer, no worms, like no things, you got to think, like, even let's say we break our arm. If we break our arm, and let's say we're trying to get big biceps, we got a broken arm. Well, there's no sense, like, your body's not going to build your bicep until it fixes your arm. It's the immediate danger. It's kind of like, I think that's how it is with deer's rack growth. your
Okay.
your rack is not going to be some crazy, it's not putting all that extra nutrients to the rack if there's ailments in the body and if the body's
Okay.
stressed. So like,
Hmm.
its first priority is to make itself well. If it has everything it needs, the surplus goes to the rack. So a
Right.
super laxed out deer that's got living by the river, feeding on, big egg, got plenty of food source, low pressure, those are the fucking deer that get to be giants, I think.
Okay.
That's my
That's
take on it.
awesome. Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. Like if a deer gets injured, that side of his body or that side of his rack is usually a little smaller, or funky, or whatever. So,
Well, they
I mean,
actually
I definitely agree.
that's something different because that's I think the opposite side. I think
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
right, yeah. So like if they
Hmm.
hurt the leg, the opposite side, but that's more on a. I don't know if that's directly correlated to size, more so like the structure of it. Which I
Right.
don't know. That'd be a good. Actually, that's a super interesting question to be.
I know.
To,
I've been dying to get a good biologist on here to ask some whitetail questions that I've like had for a long
yeah,
time,
that would be a good
But
question.
yeah, a lot of biologists don't really want to deal with podcasters, and I don't,
No.
it is what it is. Or we're just not big enough yet. I don't know. One or the other. But hey, well, dude, my biggest thing I really wanted to help. I've had a couple people message me and ask me like, man, how can I become a better October hunter? Like how, especially I've had a lot of questions about like how can I be a better morning hunter in October? And I'm like, well, man, like that, what a better person to ask that question to than you. I personally am not going to lie, I suck at hunting in October. I mean, I'm okay. I've killed a few, um, and I feel like I'm getting a little bit better. I guess as like my knowledge goes on with like bedding and kind of targeting deer and bedding, but I have yet to pull it off. And I don't know why that is. So I'm kind of looking to learn a little bit too, maybe and pick your brain, like knowing a little bit that I know now and, the base knowledge of like deer and stuff. Maybe it's all like my entrance that I'm failing on or like the timing that I'm doing it. I mean, just figured I get there. I'm not sure where you want to start off with that. I know it's kind of a broad question, but I
Um.
mean,
Yeah. Pretty broad, but I think I think a good place to start is to look at. I think where most people fall short is that they're looking at early October or even like the October lull or any of this time in October as they're kind of putting it on the same spectrum as like the main part of the season in November, right? And a lot of these people that don't have the success, not that they're hunting, rutting deer, they're just like expecting the success and the action to be in those type of areas. Like and what they're missing, I think, and a lot of people are missing is that or the success that I find is always very close to bedding, and that bedding can also be very close to food, right? So, if you're like way out, if you're trying to like hunt even now, like there's scrapes lit up, but it's not like scrape hunting season. It's not like the time to be
right.
focusing on scrapes, right? Now, if you can get in a good spot that you can also capitalize on a scrape, that's a win-win. Like why not, right? But for instance, guys might be camping out on the edges waiting to kill on that scrape in the afternoon. And it's hot and it's not really like those scrapes are probably being laid down at night. It's or they might be sitting like their favorite pinch, or on this hedgerow that they're used to having the action on at different times of year, and that's why they're not seeing that success. But when I always talk about like especially October hunting is most of the times not glamorous. You don't
Yeah.
see a whole lot of deer. It's very and where I'm hunting usually is thick, and me and buddy of mine Josh, we're down here hunting together right now, and the morning setups have consistently been very close approximation to actual beds or bedding areas like that. We know these deer are going to come back from, or it's the importance of scouting too and trying to move those deer and get them out of their bed, because if you're sitting on this transition that could be huge, and
Mhm.
you don't have a general idea of the bed or the feeding, you can just be out of the game. For instance, this morning I was way too deep, and where I was nowhere near any buck bedding. So I'm like, or you know what I'm saying? It was kind of a
Yeah.
shot in the dark. Um,
Okay.
so I think that's something to
Now,
sum that
like,
up. Yeah,
right.
you go.
I was just going to interrupt you for one thing. So, like, did you hunt that spot yesterday, like afternoon? Like, did you start off in the afternoon and go about it like that? So you already had your set hung there in the morning, or did you go in
Nope, I
and you
went
were
in
like,
blind.
I have an idea of where I want to set up?
Yeah. So I every time I go in, I try to go in with at least an idea of where I want to be, and then I'll make like because I usually just hang in the morning when I go in, And I was talking about this recently on a different podcast, or maybe it was a vlog or something. But I kind of categorize the setups, or I categorize that into two things, right? There's like going in blind and going in dark. And like I like to go in blind, which I call going in with previous knowledge of the area. Like you've walked the ground, like, and you just have a spot in your mind of like, I need to get in this general area. I think that's going to be good. Going
Yeah.
in dark would be like, oh, that ridge looks nice. I'm going to go check that out in the morning. And you'd never been on that ridge. Like that's more of a
Right.
long shot to me, and it's more ballsy because it's like, well, you have no fucking idea. You're just throwing you're essentially throwing a shot in the dark, like a shot in the dark, right? Like you're
Yeah.
totally fucking
Yeah.
blind. And that can be useful, but like I always like to at least get a little bit of a prior knowledge of that area to know like the lay of the land and stuff. So in that particular set, I just went in, it's a new year. I haven't laid eyes on anything, and I'm just making judgment calls based off of kind of a process of elimination, and it all starts with the wind direction and what areas are huntable, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I may want to go over, I may like in my head think like, oh, this is where I'd like to start optimally, but if the wind doesn't, um, if the wind doesn't allow for that, then I'm not just going to go push into that. I'll kind of, especially early in the season, it's about feeling out, covering ground, especially if you got no prior intel, and trying to get a visual or trying to,
Yeah.
find that.
I think the hardest thing I have is like maybe it's just the woodlots that I get to hunt, but man, like if I go in there and I'm not 100% on the tree that I'm going to pick, I just feel like maybe it's just like my internal ADD just has such a hard time picking the right tree. And then like I find myself like hanging my sticks in like gray light, you know what I mean? Do you ever do is that like kind of how you're going about it, or are you getting in there your stands like set at dark and you're waiting a half hour?
No, fuck no. No,
Okay.
actually most of the time, traditionally I'm running late just because of the fact I'm always late. But yeah, usually it's gray light for sure. But that's more strategic. I don't like to get in there too early. I never have. Never been a
Okay.
guy who got there that early.
Maybe
I mean,
that's where I'm going wrong. Like, cause I get in there maybe too early and then I feel like I blow it. Like if I set up in the wrong tree or something. There was one time a couple years ago, I tried something out and I actually did have a good buck come through and I couldn't even get a shot at him. And he was like 25
yeah.
yards away and it was
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like when it's actually dark, and then or you're going in dark, like I
Yeah.
was just explaining, it's really hard to, and you almost need, if anything, like maybe if you got a long trek, you're going in early to ultimately get there at that gray light time to where you can get up, because you don't want to, like you said, set up and all of a sudden find out you can't even shoot. Like it just
Right.
makes no sense, right? Um,
Yeah.
unless there could be maybe open pines or something, like you might be able to just take a shot in the dark, or if you're trying to cover more of an area. But especially the way I hunt, dude, I need a 15-yard shot. Like I can't just go in there in the dark and just pray I fucking get up in the right tree.
Right.
I do think you analyze things a little differently too in gray light than you do in like full daylight. Sometimes you navigate through the timber like, path of least resistance, and that's a lot of times the way the deer go.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you, man. Like I feel like I try to set up, if I know that a deer is bedded, I mean, I think the hardest thing I have is dissecting like, all right, he's going to be bedded here and here's the ag field. If is he going to come in this way or is he going to come in that way? Like how do you distinguish what way
Huh.
the deer's going to go in? Is that like by just reading the situation, or are you kind of like winging it and trying to catch him on the off trail, or are you setting up right near the bed if you know where the bed is and you bump that deer?
Yeah, so it can be all the above. Like for me, it's definitely situation dependent based off of every little bit of information I'm gathering, right? So they're all pieces to this puzzle. If for instance, if it like, it kind of started out, or how you started it out was like, okay, you had an inkling that a buck was bedded here, and then it ended with you physically jumped him out of. Those are two total different
Right.
situations, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
had I, when I bump a deer, and I know his exact, like where he was and can identify the exact place he was bedded up, and I'll, look at the area and look at the situation, because then it's like ideally, you know, everybody wants to go to what the buck is doing, I look at how can I make, like, what can I need to be invincible. It's the number one thing, right? So instead of looking at even going deeper than, it's like a process of elimination with me, like, okay, well, what is the wind doing? Can I hunt this spot? If I can, then oh shit, okay, where can I be? Where can I be to hunt this bed? If I can't, okay, where's the first place I can logically get to hunt? And then I'll, based off of scouting the area and then any previous intel, I would use all those pieces to make my best, or my hypothesis, right? My best determination of what that buck was doing. And that could be different every time. He might
Okay.
be hooking around, coming into the bed a different way. You know, everything, all things matter into here is like, okay, what's the food source? What does the lay of the land look like? Which way did he run when I bumped him? Which way, which way was the wind? Like I think about all that. Like just I'll put it all into the equation. And a lot of times some people they're not looking at everything. They're just looking at one thing. So it's like, damn, I don't know. But if you
Right.
start to look at every little thing, you start to grab every little piece, after analyzing 20 different pieces, you're going to have a common way that they like, you know what I'm saying? They'll all
Hmm.
sort of nudge you into one way, and that's your best guess. That's all you can
I
do.
got you. And realistically, like you've gotten to this point by bumping a lot of deer in the morning, right? I mean, you've learned from
Mhm.
doing this, and like you're like, all right, well, here's something I can grab out of a
Yep.
scenario that I had in the past. And
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
the-
do you think it's too advanced to like? Do you feel like a guy needs to be at a certain level before he really can be successful doing this, or do you think you could take somebody?
are we talking a bump and dump specifically?
No, no, no. Just I guess
Early.
I'm like kind of applying like early October morning hunting, like
Yeah.
and
No,
and being successful.
um I think there's things that I don't think you need to be like a super seasoned hunter. I think it can happen for everybody. I think you have to be uh you got to be persistent, but the biggest, let me think here how to put this. The biggest hang up or the toughest hurdle for me was always, I was that proactive guy um that would go do a lot of scouting, and I would be able to find these deer. Sometimes that's hard for people. I would be able to find them, but like manipulating the area was really tough for me, and I'd always fuck up. Like
Okay.
and I've met buddies like that and things like that, and I know when I talk to people, I know the difference, and I can almost tell if they're going to be like really good hunters or not. And it's the people that are like really go get them and they know how to scout and they have that knowledge. They just haven't put the pieces together on how to like actually read it from then on. Like, because that's normally the hardest part. Is like some people are like, well, how the hell do I find a buck? If you're one of those guys who finds you're bumping bucks all the time and you just can't kill them, that like that's okay. Be patient because it'll come. You'll get it. And that took a lot of failing at those locations, but I always would get sucked into that. You know, I was gonna do a section on this. It's like they're trap spots, right? You think you find this scrape and you're like, that's the spot. It's the hot scrape. It's getting hit. He's hitting this scrape. Or you got this fucking camera and you got 76 pictures of him on that scrape. So the first thing you want to do is hunt that scrape. That's everybody's go-to. Oh, hunt the scrape, hunt the scrape, hunt the scrape. If you get your head out of that, if you get your head out of that and get your head into, okay, the scrape is just one piece of the fucking puzzle. Where can I be bulletproof and ambush him on this scrape? That's a whole different question. You're not, it's the same thing with beds. Everybody, bed hunting got popular, and that's all it was like, you got to kill them over their bed. Got to find their bed. Got to
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah.
And yes, that's a valuable piece of information. I love to find the bed too, but even when you find the bed, it shouldn't be like, oh, got to kill them over this bed. It should be like, oh, that's a huge piece of info.
Yeah.
It's like you can't solve a puzzle with one piece.
Right. And like for me in the past, like I've been there and I find myself in that exact scenario you're describing. And it's like, okay, I found a deer's bed. I know he's here and I know he's going there, so I'm gonna try to get in between. Like, I've heard you say that too. It's like it's very scenario based. Just because you know where he's bedded doesn't mean you have to kill him in his bed. Like, but there's no more
If
valuable
you,
piece of information to have in your arsenal, right? Like
yeah, if you,
knowing where he is on a certain wind. Like, okay, I'm gonna go throw a chance at him. And
Oh, it's a huge benefit. I mean, really, that's all they're doing every day is eating. And if you know where they're actually bedding, and then you know where they're eating, that's like those are really the only things you need to start like or to be able to hunt pretty aggressively.
yeah, where would you say most guys really fail at that? Trying this stuff.
Like manipulating an area.
Mm-hmm. Like if
Just
they go, like they do actually go and they kick a deer up, like where do you feel like a lot of people
they
fail?
don't people don't like I said, they're too caught up in hunting that area and they're not looking at the big picture, I think that's
Okay.
number one. And then they don't have enough knowledge of wind and thermals. And then also there's knowledge of like close quarter killing and like there's a lot of things like even, like um uh there's like so much valuable or so many valuable skills in that last stretch to having them down, right? So if like you find them, you set up the stand, and even like let's say your stand setup's right, then even being stealthy enough to get it done in that close quarter situation, and making the right call, because a lot of these people they don't make the right call and they actually end up getting busted by the deer before it even gets there, and they
Yeah.
they might not have ever seen them. And this is just a classic example of like people aren't thinking deep enough into being bulletproof. They're too caught up in like trying to hunt that spot,
Okay.
which
That makes
you
sense.
know, uh, which
So lack of knowledge in thermals and
uh,
stuff like
not,
that, you feel like?
and it's not always thermals, but like
Yeah. I
uh,
think more people understand wind than they do thermals. The
100%.
general
Yeah,
guy, like,
they're
and
they're brothers, so like
yeah,
right, and they're fucking joined at the head. What do you call that? You know what I'm saying? They're twins, right? Whatever you want to call.
conjoined twins.
Well, yeah. So like they're different things, but you can't talk about fucking like when we're whitetail hunting, it's both, right?
Yes.
You can't just be like, oh, well, the wind's doing that. You have to have at least a general understanding of what the thermals are going to do, and how wind reacts too.
Yeah.
Um, and vice versa. You wouldn't want to be like, well, the thermals are doing this and only this, because wind direction, does go hand in hand with that. So it's like,
What about like scenarios when you're like hunting deer in hardwoods, right? Like maybe like big terrain, big woods, and these deer are bedding near like oaks and big oak flats and stuff like that. And okay, he's bedded here, but he's eating close by to where he's bedded at. Like, so what would you do in a scenario like that?
yeah, so those are, and you find a lot of that early. So I'm glad you
Yeah,
brought that up because like
yeah,
that's a really that's a very good example of like an early scenario to where like okay, there's a good one you want to kill on this oak flat and like you've kicked him off there, but he's bedded so close to where he's feeding, and that's where I think the biggest thing is people are a little too timid, and sometimes you have to physically get them out of there so you can set up, and then beat them back, right? So or oh, there it was again, dude. Am I going crazy?
no, it's definitely something weird with that. That I'll
So
have
that's
to
there,
highlight
right?
that.
It's not me,
It did
right?
it earlier too. Yeah.
All right, okay.
There's
Anyway,
fireworks behind Cody's head right now
yeah,
in the app we're recording, so I have no
maybe
idea what that's about. But
maybe they'll see it. Um,
yeah, I'll put this one up on the YouTube so y'all can watch it.
Um, anyway, so yeah, so you have to like almost get him out of there. So like, and the only way you can do that is to bump him out of there, and then try and be set up for when he comes back if he's that tight to it. And if not, then maybe the next day, like that could be a good example of a time you'd want to get in extra early and
Yeah,
maybe sneak in anticipating that you're probably going to bump him if he's that close, and then you'll have a little bit more time for it to reset if getting in that early is not going to mess you up with a thermal basis based off of
yeah,
where he is,
that's
right?
the
So like
problem, right?
yeah, so there's all, it's again taking the oh shit, what's my bid information, if this is real, if he's betted on the rim, or he's bedded this, let's say this is a shelf that this oak is on, and he's kind of hanging around there, and you can get off that shelf, well, and he's above you or he's on that shelf and you can get just off of it, well then then you're like almost invincible, or like then you get in there an hour early. If you bump him, he doesn't really know what's going on. You get up there, you got the thermal pull going down all morning, and is in and it's not, you don't have any rise or whatever, or he's not below you to where you're going to just fill this whole freaking area up for an extra hour with scent while it's dropping, or
Yeah.
while it's still pooling on the ground. That'd be a good scenario. So then he might be in the general vicinity. And then when the sun comes up, he's like just, and then that's whether you're hunting. That'd be if you're hunting him like where he was bedded on the fringe. Or the opposite, you sneak in there to the rim and trying to get him let's say he's feeding around, and, you're killing him on that feed. Or you get in there late morning, because typically these bucks will get up at least once at like 9 or 10, or maybe not 9. They're probably bedding down at like 9, maybe 11. Late morning they'll get up, and a lot of times they like browse within like a 80 yard of where they're
Just
bedded. They
working their
might,
way in real slow to their bed, pretty much.
well, no, they bed, and then they get
Oh,
up late
they'll get
morning
up and
after.
mill around a little.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. They'll get up and mill around. So if you can be there set up, even if he's already bedded, like you sneak in on the fringe, a lot of times you can get him killed if you just stay put. And when he gets up, he ends up just, working in your direction. If you can get that
Yeah.
close, which is important to have a good, quiet setup, and
That's right.
sneak
Let's
in.
let's taper into that. So, what is your setup this year? What's your go-to? Are you
You
got a
know, I
Frankenstand or
well, no,
are
I
you?
just so well, I'm always prototyping things, and I do a lot of
Yeah.
testing. So none of my stuff's always, but so I just actually did a video on this on my YouTube channel, and it's kind of like my go-to, right? So um if you had to ask me, aside from prototyping things or trying different sizes or different styles, like if it was, hey, you're grabbing this stand, and I always start with this, and this is always a stand I have, or my setup that I have in the arsenal, and then I might mess around with a few other ones, but it's going to be the .5 with two sticks. Those two sticks have turned into the doubles. They used to be the compacts, but like my go-to is just the two doubles, 20-inch aiders on the .5.
Okay. Can I ask why the doubles? And I feel like for you where you're at, like you got a lot more like crooked trees and stuff. The singles seem to be the ticket for that kind of
Yeah,
scenario. So how'd you get into using the doubles?
there was a I was I, yeah, because I used the compacts, and the compacts were like my babies, especially like when we developed those and came out with the first one. It was like, dude, that was my stick.
Yeah.
And so I switched over to the doubles to do some testing for the actual standoff studs, and I was grinding different patterns in there to see which one would bite better. And I really wanted to give it like a fair shot, because when everybody would ask me compacts or doubles, I'd always say compact because it's more versatile, and for crooked tree, things like that. And
Hmm.
then I was using them for like a season, and then even gnarly trees, the percentage of times that I got into a situation that I really couldn't use them, or that I thought like, man, I wish I had the compacts right now, was way less than I thought they'd be. And the one thing too, and it seems small, but the deployment of everything, and the way I had them fastened, right? So I started running the doubles actually on my seat with just a little bungee, and it was
Yeah.
so easy to just pop them off, and they're ready set up, and I just strap them on, and I use the cam straps. The compacts, I had a little bit more of a tedious way I ran the belts on them, and then you
Hmm.
had to deploy the steps, and then the V brackets, and I had them J hooked. So then I was like, and I'm very anal, right? So I like one stick on each side. That's two J hooks. It's two things to detach now.
Yeah,
Little,
that's my
when
only gripe about the compacts is the J hook,
yeah,
and like
and
I use the Titan straps, and that thing it's just like bam bam done,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I do love the
and
speed of it.
and you can run. I got something that I'm working on that I wanted to have done already, but it got put on the back burner. But it's a new strap for all the sticks, and it lives
Yeah.
on your stand, and it makes it really easy to do both. So
Okay.
so to answer your question, those little things, those shaving like my efficiency, that little, it made that big of a difference that I was like, oh shit, okay, I'm just way more efficient. So I started running those, and I just like started
Yeah.
to like those. Um, and then
What
some of my
length are you
longer,
doing?
the 14s.
14s. Okay.
Yeah, the 14s. And because then I run a, I run a 20. Actually, mine's a 22-inch aider. Um, so I run a long aider. So I make up for that distance with the aider from like a 17. And honestly, like, a lot of people, I talk to them all the time. Oh, what sticks did I get? And I'm like, well, depends on what you're looking to do. Are you looking for the lightest stick? Like, because a 14 is going to be the lightest and the lowest profile. And, oh yeah, but I can't get as high. I'm like, that's further from the,
Yeah,
yes,
you
you can.
can. Yeah,
You can get
absolutely.
just as high with a
Eh,
14-inch stick as you can. It's about the
Yeah.
gapping and about your aider, and it all comes into play. So
Yeah.
when you spell that out for people, sometimes they're like, "Oh shit, okay," and so
Yeah. No,
yeah,
I agree with you,
I
man.
like I like the
I run
14s.
20s on my 14s, and when I got the 14s, I started off with the 17s, and I said to a lot of people, they're like, "Oh, what should I get?" And I'm like, "Dude, I run 3 all the time, and I honestly can't tell a difference in my hunting height. Like, I don't have a tape measure with me, but I can
Yeah,
get if I need to get up there, I'll figure out a way to get up there. You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
like it is what it
it's
is.
not as drastic as people think. Like the
Yeah.
and
And
I
this
think
year, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
no, was that this
I
year?
said this year I kind of find myself leaning towards the old Cody motto of maybe just running 2 sticks
Yeah, dude, I'm
because
telling
I'm on like hunt number 7 or 8 this year, and most of my hunts I've not used like 3 sticks. So I'm like, okay,
you. Yeah.
I find myself leaving it at the bottom a lot of times. But it
Well,
is nice to have it if I need it,
yeah,
because
it's
there is
it's one
some
of those,
times where I would like to be a little bit higher.
when you I think all the people that I know that have like heard me say that and then tried it and now they're like total 100% two stick guys as well. I think it comes from when you realize in your head and you finally, like, it takes a while to have this realization. Some people get it quicker. When you realize you do not need more equipment, like, or generally speaking, right? And it's just like you said, like I've found now there are, man, I'm trying to think of the last time that I've literally been sitting or that I've been sitting by a tree and like, God damn it, I need more sticks. It's there's been times where I'm like, okay, I could be a little higher, but with my knowledge of thermals and stuff, and normally that's in a case where I'm in really steep terrain and
Yeah.
I'm trying to like just get a pull and get higher. But in
Hmm.
that essence, there's always another tree that I can go to that's higher up the ridge that I can shoot the same trail. I mean,
Right.
9 times out of 10. So it's like I find other ways to make it work with what I have, and then in a worst case scenario, I'll just stretch them out more. Um, but like I always weigh it, right? I'm a big like believer in like weighing, like your pros and your cons. The con of that one or two times not having that stick is I will take that fucking a million times over giving up my pros of how much lighter, how much efficient, how much I'm not having to fuck around with 3 sticks and just all the um it's when you realize and come to the realization that you really don't ever need 3 sticks, like really need them, then
Yeah.
it's like, oh well fuck, why am I even taking it? But I
Right.
used to be that way too, man. For a little while, I kept that extra one. Well, how long are you gonna just haul a fucking full stick around? How many
Yeah.
times is it gonna take you to not use it before you leave it at home? It's just,
And the
and maybe you'll
speed
never
of
leave.
things too. I mean, the speed is like second to none because you put one on
That's
the
what
ground and you put another one up. You don't need you pretty much don't even need to haul it. You could literally climb the tree with it in your hand and put it on there.
yeah,
So, I mean,
dude.
I get it.
Yesterday,
I get it.
yesterday I was uh I didn't even use the stick. What I did, I took the actual sticks, bundled up, and I just pushed them against the tree at a slight angle, and I just used them as a step stool to get up in the stand. That's how fucking low. Like they were just sitting there. I was like, "Ooh, don't kick out on me." But I didn't put no strap on them. I just
Yeah.
and I think the last few sets I was in were like I was just one stick off the ground.
Are they the
Especially now.
micros or are you doing the V2s now?
The micros. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So
Sweet.
yeah. So that's the news. Well, the V2s are sick, dude. Honestly, I think if
They
if
are.
somebody
They're
was gonna
slick.
get if somebody was gonna get a stick, a double stick, I'd probably recommend the V2 because it's more of an encompassing. And I think for our giveaway, we'll probably do the V2s because, the micros are such a niche. Like, it's for those guys who are wanting to cut weight, cut profile, and that's your, like, it's designed for that reason. The
Yeah, bare
V2 is
bones. Yeah.
the V2 is not I mean, it's still super lightweight, super compact. It's just one notch above that. It's a little more all-encompassing, right? It's got a little bit roomier of a footbed. It's a 17-inch, not the 14. It's still got all the same great features. It's got the belt guides and all that, but it might be more of like a what you're, more out, like what more people
Yeah.
would dig for
Is
it.
that where things are going for you guys, or are we not going to make the original like doubles like we were before, or is this just like
Yeah, so
the new version?
Yeah, so kind of how it lays out is the 14s, the old 14s are no longer they're done, they're dead. The micros have replaced the 14. The V2s have replaced the original 17, and
Okay.
now the 20s will be the only stick that'll remain the same robust thickness as it was off the bat, except it'll also get the new technology of some of the new technology of the V2. So
Okay.
the line kind of just evolved, right? So the V2s took the place of your standard 17 doubles, and then the micros took the place of your standard 14s.
I got you. Sweet, man. Yeah, I'm excited. I really want to get some of the butterflying doubles.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
feel like with that and the Ranger setup, man, like that's probably one of the most versatile setups I could have. If I had to
oh dude,
pick like one
100%.
stand, I mean, I feel like I could get in any tree with that, like hands
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
But
I might even be setting up a Ranger too, just to mess around with it a little bit more.
it could have came in handy tonight for you.
I know,
How
man.
did
It's
your
like,
So you didn't care much? I actually really enjoyed using the ghost harness the other day. I used it in a
yeah,
hang one, and I used it instead of the saddle, and I like it. I mean, I think it's great. And I still
yeah,
was
no,
able to do a little bit of like kneeling into the tree. I just like loosened up that
yeah.
tether, and
Well, and you got the bigger back pad, right?
yeah, yeah. You
Yep,
got the
yep.
micro,
Yeah, so I got the little one
yeah,
because I run that. I just run it like it's a rock harness, and I like it because it's
right,
comfortable. I can hike with that thing, and it doesn't, it's real nice. It's like streamlined, and so I like that thing. But even like tonight, in a circumstance right there where the tree was all wonky and I needed to be set up like with the tree facing me, and I'm a sitter, right? So I like sitting all the time. Well, this particular time I'm standing and kind of just leaning into that like it's a like saddle style. And yeah, man, like my biggest qualm with that is I just can't. I don't know if I'm doing it if my angles are wrong, but like my feet just get wore out.
yeah,
Because like when I'm leaning back, it's like my feet are pushing toward the front of my boots. So it's not, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's if
yeah.
I'm and maybe I need to pitch my platform different in those scenarios or something. But
I
um,
would play with that. You know, I'm one of the guys. I really don't pitch my platform down that often. I mean, I will, but to me, a lot of times, like I'll just stand my feet right on the edge of that thing. But I mean, what boots are you
oh
running? Your
wait,
Crispies
wait,
or?
did you put your boots on the edge of the platform?
Yeah, I'll just put my feet like, and I'll like just kick back and I'll lean. So like,
Okay,
give yourself some room and then just stand straight up. And I'll
that's right.
just put
You're on
my
not on the .5 though,
um yeah, no, because it's not it like
because
that
you're
point
way
five is a little bit longer, isn't it?
yeah, you're
Yeah.
yep yep. Now
Yeah.
the Ranger, I could see doing that with the okay. That makes sense then, because then I can get my feet like this, you
Hmm.
know, and they're not like it's not just like jamming into the freaking
Yeah.
toe.
And
Um,
another huge thing I do, and like this is more for saddle style, but I have a back band. So I can just sit down with my knees against a tree in that back band. It's like sitting in a chair.
ah,
And like my knees will hurt if I'm sitting there for like 2 hours or more. But then I'll just stand up every once in a while periodically and like, I'll hang out standing for a half hour and then I'll
yeah,
put my knees in. But usually like last night, man, I'll just be ready and I'll be standing up and I don't know. It doesn't usually hurt, but I guess because I got that shorter platform, I can put my
yeah,
boots up there and like kick back, and it doesn't hurt my toes. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
do know what you're saying now. And at first, I couldn't wrap my head around. I'm like, why is his toes hurting so bad?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
makes a
Well,
lot of sense now
yeah, yeah. I don't know,
because
and
your
I
toes are all where all your weight's just going into that boot.
yeah, it's just push it, and that's what honestly that's why I didn't jive with it a few years ago when I tried it for like a full season. I'm just like, dude, I can't, and I'm the type of person too. That's why I sit. I need to be on the ready at all times. Like even tonight, you're like, oh, just spin around and sit down, and I'm like, yeah, I could do that for a little bit, but I would
For a
never
little,
forgive
yeah.
myself
Oh,
if
I
I
know.
look over my right shoulder and that freaking giant's there, and I'm like, God damn it, So
Yeah,
that's why, like when I'm sitting. I just set my stand up to where I'm never out of like I'm always ready at any point in time, minimum moving to get him killed. So, and tonight I'm like, okay, well I set the stand up like this, and now I gotta run it the whole time like this.
yeah,
Um, but
yeah.
I did,
That's
I
situational, but that
took a
sucks.
knee a couple times,
Did you?
which helped. Like I put the seat down and just put my knee on it.
Uh-huh.
That helped. Um,
Could have
change it.
straddled the tree. Would have been
Yeah, yeah,
a
I
good
could have.
picture.
Well, it wasn't. So it was too. I actually would have. I would have totally done that if there wasn't a limb right where like my knee would need to go.
Oh, that sucks. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I would have done that in a
yeah.
heartbeat. Just
That is
yeah,
one nice thing, man. I do gotta give the Ranger, and I never really thought about that until Dieter said that, and he's like, "Yeah, he's like, this is how I just like if my legs get tired or anything, I'll sit and straddle the tree." And I'm like, "What?" And then he showed me, and he's like, "Keeps my legs in good shape," and I'm like,
yeah,
"Makes sense." I don't know.
yeah. And you're
I
still
gotta
in
say,
tilt
man,
mode.
yeah, I've had so many people reach out to me about that Ranger, and no BS, it's probably my favorite setup I've run. So I've been
Yeah,
super happy with it. It's just super clean, packs up really nice at the end of the day, and
and you can
quiet.
yeah, and you can just spin around and hunt. Hunt just it
Yeah,
can be a
and
little
then if
tiny big
I
hunt.
we have so many trees around here that are oaks with cedars that butt up to them, and a lot of times if I get in those trees, like I don't want to hang on the backside, I want to sit like I'm in a stand.
Yeah, yeah.
And that thing is bare bones. I mean, it's enough for me to actually sit in if I need to. So
Are
I
you
haven't run
running?
into it yet, but
Are you running just backpack straps on it?
yeah.
And are you carrying it like you're carrying it? Are you using the seat shelf or no?
Yeah, I am. So I use the seat
Okay.
shelf. I pin that up. I actually put a big, thick back cushion on the back of it. So it brings, like, imagine that's the pad right here. So it
Yep.
brings the stand off of my back just a little bit. And then
Yep.
I got
I was
clearance.
Yeah, I was going to ask that because I know that was one of the. I'm going to mess around with that a little bit on the.
Yeah. And I
Because
cut the seat tabs off for the
yeah,
point .5 seat. I got rid of them.
yep, it doesn't carry as well as like your full out stand, but I have heard a bunch of guys out there that are like, oh no, I got it decked out, man, it's good,
Yeah.
and
No,
they love
dude,
the
that
way.
pad's it's clutch. It's super comfortable. I mean, I've done a few like mile walks in and I'm loving it. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a sweet setup. The only thing I got to figure out is like how to pack up my bag on the back of it when I'm ascending. So I can like cuz I just feel like that's my one thing I'm messing with is like
yeah,
all right, so I got a little clip that I've been doing recently and I just pop my backpack off and I'll clip that on like either on the back of my saddle or whatever, and then I just hang the stand. And it's
yeah.
been going okay, but like when I carry my mirrorless camera, it's too much weight. It's like
Oh yeah,
keeping
yeah,
that
yeah.
in the half pack and the bigger pocket arm, like
Hanging on your freaking waist. Yeah, that's a.
yeah, yeah,
You know what you might
it's
need
a
to
bit.
do? You ever try and leave it on the ground and then just take your other end of your rope up?
No, I probably should. I have a retractable gear hoist, and that's why I don't. So,
Well,
but I probably
so
ought to.
no, that's what I'm saying. So rig it up to where your gear hoist is in your backpack, your half pack, and then
Yeah.
just clip your bow to your pack and then take the other end up. And then you can
Oh,
just
okay.
you can pull it all up. I used to do that when you know, when I was running a bigger pack with film gear
Hmm.
because I want to go one shot, dude. I hate coming back
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
So I
Same.
would just, and then I'm going up light with just my gear clipped to me. It's a little harder to pull up. Like if you're using one of those razor wire ones, it's not a good
Hmm.
idea. But if you have
Yeah.
a legit gear hoist, like retractable, dude, just,
Yeah.
yeah, and then rip that fucker up at the end. And then once you're set up, everything's stable, you're hooked in, you're harnessed, then just pull it all gear up at once.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna try that out, man. I'm interested to see how that works. I don't know. I'm a little nervous with the new bow setup. I don't know. I don't want to
Drop it.
damage it. Yeah, or
Yeah.
drop it. God, that would be
Well, you're pulling
heartbreaking.
it up anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, you're
So
right. I mean, I don't know.
you're
Dude, it's a clean setup. I just need to tweak it a little bit. But
yeah.
that's really the only thing I need to work on. Other than that, I've been super pumped with it and the razor arm whenever I'm using the cell phone to film. But enough about that, man. I have a couple other questions for you here.
Oh shit,
So,
you're looking at a
what is
pad of paper right now.
I am. I wrote down questions.
Okay.
This is a big deal. So, what
Shit.
what is your
What's
like
your
goals
favorite
for
stuff?
this year? Are you like holding out for inches, or are you trying to just kill a mature buck that like trips your trigger? Like, what's the the setup for you this year and like your mission?
Dude, I'm always holding out for inches in some way, shape, or form. Like so, like, and that's the thing, man. I believe that um, I'm trying to think of the best way to answer this. So I have um, I sort of have a mental bar of like what the caliber of deer that I want to shoot, and that always kind of sits around that 170 mark, and that's like it's the that's the goal. I use that as a benchmark because it's not an easy thing to accomplish and come by, right? And what that does for the process and the hunt, like it lengthens it like even enhances the experience. Like there's something about like when you go out just to kill or just hunting for a decent buck and whatever, and you're like, oh shit, okay, this is, and you shoot it, versus like you're holding out and you're looking for that one of a certain caliber. And now, not to say, so that's what I'm doing. Like I'm going in looking for the biggest deer I can find for one, and time is always a thing, right? So based on your trip, the intel you get, what ends up being on the farm that year, and then once I start to get a lot more of that information, if there's a if then I get visual of this giant buck, that's different. Like that might make me want something even bigger than what I was originally setting out for. you know um um and usually it doesn't happen the other way. But if there's something, let's say, you have some, like, let's say I'm wanting to shoot a 170, but some 7-year-old freaking gnarly 150-inch buck comes in, and he's just, well, that's, could be game over.
Puts
It's
on a
it's just
show for you. Yeah,
yeah,
like
it's
trip your
it's
trigger
just the
that morning.
way I like it so much more like that now than back when I was like very, very inch driven. And it was more like I was running cameras because I needed to find a 170, or I needed to find one that was 180. And I needed to see him to, okay, yeah, adding it up. Yep, that's him, that's him. And it was just different, man. And then it made it not as enjoyable in a way. Like, so when I gave up the cameras, everybody's like, oh, so you don't want to, it was like, oh, well, you're not, because there's that whole camp of like, oh, trophy hunting versus, or the experience versus the trophy or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, we all want, like, we're all looking for an awesome experience, but we all want a trophy. We are all trophy hunting. And
Yes.
if
Absolutely.
you are waiting for any, like, even these guys that are shooting freaking basket racks, but not shooting a spike, or not, like, you're trophy hunting, like you.
Yeah.
And we all want, we want that. So I also think, what it, like, the discipline and like that's a really good thing too for like raising the bar, because there's a lot of people who, if you really want to shoot a 190, like, you're going to have to let some 160s walk, which is hard, real hard to do. It's like,
Yeah.
and so like discipline like that. But yeah, so I try and come into a season. I'm always looking for, a big, large caliber, the biggest deer on the property, whatever I can find, or something that trips my trigger the first time seen. And that's kind of what I'm doing this year, man. I'm just, um, um, I try and be more laxed about it nowadays. Like, for a while, especially working in the industry, it you know, you get a little pressure on, and it becomes like it's work, and like I don't ever want this to be like work.
Yeah, man. No,
It's
I
it's my
feel that like
my
deep,
passion.
honestly. And I think it's like it's kind of tough, like an internal battle I have sometimes, because it's like I'm really trying to like cross into that 170 mark, and like, dude, like, what do you do when you don't, like I can't, well, I don't want to say I can't find one, but like I really realistically,
Well,
with like what I've got right now, with like being a family man and working and everything else, like I'm just trying to kill the biggest deer I can, with
Yep.
with the
And
cards that I'm dealt.
that's where, like, and that's 100, like, and that's all you can do. But
Right.
if you are somebody who's very inch driven, or you're really got that, like, that 170 is something that you're trying to break, that's where, the use of cameras and things like that can definitely help you, because at least they'll give you that confirmation, or you might be able to sift through your other, or knowing, or you can put your limited time toward that area or that farm or that unit or whatever. So it can help you, but but they're not these big deer, 170, 180, and and whether we're talking gross or like just a Boone and Crockett caliber deer or whatever, or when you start chasing bigger inches, they're not everywhere, man, and they're not
No.
around, and even the places that they are, they're not there every year. So it's one of those things where sometimes there's just not that caliber where you're at, and you got to go elsewhere,
Hmm.
or settle for something, you know, either settle, go somewhere else, and but that's where, having that mentality too, like based off of where you're at or what you're doing, maybe you don't sell for a 140, that could be that 180 next year that you're looking for, so
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. It's definitely one of those things, man. Like I feel like, we have a little bit of pressure on us that I feel like it's more self-driven than anything. I honestly don't think anybody really gives a crap what anybody kills anymore. Like it just doesn't seem like it is. It's just not how it was a few years ago, if you want to look at it that way. But to me, I think it's like pressure we put on ourselves to like produce because of like, our friends are killing consistently. We're all killing consistently. And it's like, we're all also trying to like keep that bar up and going more and more. And it's like, yeah, but I don't want to ruin the fun of deer hunting too. You know what I mean? And it's like, to me, I don't want to feel stressed just because I'm worried about killing a giant deer when nobody else really cares. But it, it's like, have you ever like felt like that in that like dilemma, or you just,
um I think it comes down to what you're wanting out of it, man. Like
yeah,
I for a longest time, man, like, I grew up in a trophy hunting household. I grew up surrounded by big deer. That's what I wanted, man. I felt like that was it or nothing. And I got real robotic with it, and then I ultimately got into a point where I was like questioning, you know, the ethics of what I was doing, like, and I was like, "Oh shit, man, am I just like some fucking shallow fucking trophy hunter, man, that only care like, and I had a little crisis there, man, and I actually, a lot of people don't know this, but I took a back step from hunting, like such a very brief, and this is like within a season, and I when I did that, I realized that hunting was so much more to me than even the trophy, man. It fuels my soul. And
yeah,
what I get from
100%.
being when I get from being out there and chasing animals, like, it's not like the trophy enhances that. And
Yeah,
would I get that same experience if I just wanted to go kill a rack buck? I could do that very quickly, very easily.
right,
The
right,
addition to the trophy, it enhances the experience in so many layers. Like, it's undescribable, right? So, I realize, and I'm glad I found that that out quick, of why I was actually doing it. And there's because you get people too that, oh yeah, it's not about the trophy, it's just about the experience. Well, that's because you can't kill a trophy, and it's like, and I think the element of the trophy, like I said, we're all after a trophy, whatever that is. If you kill that spike, that was your trophy, but um so with that being said, um working in the industry, I have in the past, I've felt like, and yeah, you're right, I think all that stuff is in some way, shape, or form put on by yourself. But here I am, trying to create gear and trying to, help people be successful. It's nice to show that, because I've seen a lot of people that actually, put on like a false front, right? And they're, like, it's crazy, man. I've never seen, like, in today's day and age, there's more people that have hunting companies or companies about things, and they don't even do those things, which is crazy to me. I'm
yeah,
just like, how are you making this if you don't even do that? Like, You don't even live the
Mhm.
life, man. Or like, a dude that's, making dumbbells and has never lifted one. It's like, I
Right,
just,
right.
I just, this shit fucking mind boggles me. So I guess there's always been a little bit of pressure that I put on myself, but I want to show and I want people to know that, like, hey, the this gear that we're producing makes a difference, and the way we make it, or why we make it the way we make it, is because it has aided us in the success and the consistent success, and then and that means something to me too. And it's not all about you know a deer on the ground, but it does help. But
Yeah.
when you are passionate about what you do for work, that line starts to blur sometimes. And here we are, and it's like sometimes working in the industry you love can kill that, which is, I don't want that ever to happen. So I
Yeah. I guess, like, in a nutshell, like, what you're kinda saying is, like, it's good to just reflect on what your actual goals are and what you're looking to get out of
well,
your hunting, right?
yeah, yeah, being
I mean,
realistic, and then
yeah.
and not judging it off. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with judging or setting goals with yourself. I think
Mhm.
that's what drives us to be better people. And you know, if you have a goal to where you want to shoot a bigger inch deer than the one you've seen at the Iowa frickin' Deer and Turkey Classic, then motherfucker, more power to you, man. Go kill it. Like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome to have that goal, and if you can stick to that, and if you're some dude who just wants to go out and feel like he read the land and killed a buck that's, got a just whatever of a rack, well, fucking A, man. That's awesome too.
Yeah.
But I think, I just, where I think it gets shitty is when people make excuses and or they, they trick themselves into thinking they're not a trophy hunter, or they're not looking for this or that. You just gotta, whatever you want, man.
Yeah. Amen. I mean, I think there's a whole lot of different, like, sides of that spectrum right now. Like, with buck shaming, and then
Well,
shaming on people that, like, it's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Like, you may as well just do what
okay.
the hell you want to do and be happy with yourself,
I
because
think I think all that is a little ridiculous. Like yeah, man. I don't know. I've seen it. I've seen people that, oh yeah, like it goes. It's like it goes. It's a two-way street, right? You get the guys who, you get buck shaming one way, and then you get it the other way. It's like, oh, you killed this small buck. Like, oh, well, you killed it. Like, I don't know, man. It's just fucking nuts, dude. It's just so stupid.
I had to ask this question: Do you miss running cameras or not?
Um, there's there's certain instances that I miss it. Like,
Yeah.
um, I miss it for the sense of narrowing down multiple properties. I used to be very systematic in which I would run cameras and then use the intel to tell me exactly, you know, where the time was being spent. Especially back when I used to work all week and I only had, Friday, Saturday, Sunday every weekend.
Hmm.
It was more crucial that I spent the time I had in the right state or on the
Yeah.
right peak. So that was
Right.
huge. Um, you know, so I miss it in those instances, but as much as I miss it and as much as I think about, like, oh, this would be helpful to do that, I just know it's such a fucking slippery slope, man, and I don't
I
like running
I
them.
like envision you saying that all the time when I, like, because I have cell cameras and you're like, it's such a slippery slope, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
holy shit, yeah, it
yeah.
really is, isn't it? Like,
Dude, it is. It is.
and like, I'm like, to your point, like, I remember growing up as a kid and going in the woods and not knowing what's going to come out, and like how exciting it is when you finally
Yeah,
see a good buck or something. You're like, shit, do I want to, like, back then it was like kill, because like it didn't matter, but like having that
yeah.
one buck tag, in a good state, it's like, oh, what do you, oh man, in, like, you can't really, there's, I don't think there's even like 5 or 10% of guys now that
Well,
whitetail hunt that are hardcore, that don't know what the biggest buck is on their farm at a
yeah,
majority of the time,
it's not.
right?
It's really non-existent, man. It's not something that's around much anymore. I don't think anybody does that.
Yeah.
And I think,
I'm looking forward to doing it. I'm gonna go to
Well,
Missouri this year and hunt, and
well, it puts
like,
less.
and I'm not
It
putting
puts
any
less.
cameras out.
It puts a little less pressure on yourself too, honestly. But it also can. On the flip side, it could have you in an area wasting time. If you
It,
didn't have
it
like.
can.
But then again, it's like it's one of those things where, um, it's funny because you mentioned being out of state. Like I talked to somebody just recently, and they're like, "Oh, I'd love to adapt that." I'm like, "Okay, well, tell me about your time. Tell me about when you went to Kansas last year, and you shot the biggest buck of your life." And he's in, out of state trip, no camera intel. You get there, you start hunting. Like, dude, that's it
Yeah.
right there, man. And you just told me it was the best hunt of your life and the best experience of your life. And well, why not make that every fucking day? Why not do that?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
especially if you're in an area that can hold good deer. Now,
Hmm.
for instance, like I said though, where I miss it is like having any bit of intel. Like it's like, ooh man, it'd be real nice to, you know, but it's more. But if you take the approach that it's more like, okay, it's a time thing, and like it'll just take a little bit more time to see what's going on, and okay, it's realistic. Like I might miss a big one, or I might shoot something that's a little smaller than the biggest one, but like I'm okay with that as long as that's where it becomes important that you can stay like true to your bar and your discipline, right?
Yeah.
So, cause
Yeah.
even though there might be a 190, but if you're still like, well, I'm holding out for a 170 and you're happy with that, well, you're going to be happy regardless. Even if you find out there was a 190 there, would you
Yeah.
have been more happy with the 190? I don't think so
Right.
because you still set your goal. You did it. You hunt is for instance, I can think of this exact farm I'm hunting right here. There was it was the year I gave up cameras, so it was like 5 years ago, whatever. Um, Opening week, I killed an old bruiser buck, gray faced, very cool buck. I was super jacked about it. I found out a month and a half later that there was like a 180 on the property, and one of the other guys ended up killing it later in that year. Do I think I could have killed that deer if I knew he was there? Yes, I think there's a very good chance. But was I like bummed out on the seat? No, I was jacked. I was still jacked with that buck. I didn't regret it. It's just one of those things where does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Yeah. Oh,
And
and that's why I wanted to ask, because I'm like,
well, and even
that's
now,
where you
so
got to
I'm
have your goals, right? And like you got to see your goals through. And like you, to your point, if you successfully fulfill that goal, like, are you going to be happy? Yeah. Well,
well,
like then it really
it's
shouldn't
like
matter, right?
it's like one of those things too, man. I know it's a slippery slope, and it's even in instances like right now, or okay, let's say you're freaking okay. Let's say
Well, I know that where you're at, there's probably cameras out there that you could
oh,
probably go
dude,
pull a
man, I
card. And
swear,
like,
no, no,
I know that has
I,
to happen every once in
I,
a while. You're like, oh, son of a bitch, I want to see what's on
no,
this.
I don't. Yeah, oh, for sure. I've never pulled somebody else's camera card, but like, there's definitely times I'll be scouting and I'll look over and see the camera and I'll be like, damn, I wish I knew what the fuck was on that camera,
Oh yeah,
you know.
I
And
guarantee it.
I'm lucky enough too to where I got a couple close buddies that'll actually at least give me intel and share like, oh yeah, I got a good picture. Like, not that I'm like wanting to see them, but like that's intel that I can use, right? And it's
Yeah,
kind of like if you got a problem with beer, but you go over to buddy's house and he's like, hey, you want a beer? But you ain't buying some and keeping them at your house. Because if they're at your house, you're drinking all of them. Like I'm not gonna run the cameras. Like, am I gonna like refuse if somebody's like, hey, like I got a picture here, fucking, okay, whatever, let's see it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I really,
right.
but I really try and like not. But dude, I last scouting mission I went on the last piece, actually piece of public, dude. Dude, there was like, I think I I spotted four that I was able to avoid, and then I was caught by like three, seven fucking cameras, and it's like
How
and
big of an
there's
area would you say?
this chunk,
Yeah,
500 acres, and that's just randomly me scouting, and I don't know who's all whatever, but um, I've seen more, but I'm just saying like they're so prevalent and they're out there a lot, and
yeah.
now every single camera I've seen, I was wondering what was on it for sure. I'm like, damn. Like
Hmm.
it'd be nice to see what the fuck was hitting this at fucking midnight.
Yeah,
Uh,
especially when you see there's like car
yeah,
hood scrapes and
yeah,
stuff like that. It's like, ooh,
or
okay.
annual data, like the long term data too. That's cool. Like I do miss doing that. Like pulling a card. at the end of the year just to kind of see like what all.
Yeah,
That's
I do
cool.
that a lot on public. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
actually you know what? Now that you say that, I've got a camera that I need to go check. That's been sitting in there since last October. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, shows how much I've been scouting some of these public places. But
Yep.
yeah, man. You know, the one of the other questions that I wanted to ask you earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt you, and we talked about like scrapes and that, and it sparked it back in me. How can you like? Is it just basic knowledge, like for you, because you've scouted so much and hunted so much? Like, how do you differentiate, or are you able to differentiate like sign that's late at nighttime versus daytime? Like, is there any way, any good
Um,
tips you could give for guys, like maybe to like, and I know a general thing would be like, you know, if you're finding scrapes on food sources, majority of the time, those are going to be, you know, nighttime scrapes, right?
I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
um, um, I think the only way to really know if a scrape is a nighttime or like because that's a fucking we're talking we're talking magician capabilities here now.
Right, right.
Like
I didn't
I
know if
think
you had a good broad.
well, I think the only way to really know is like your woodsmanship type like if you can tune into like your inner woodsman, right? And this isn't in all circumstances, but like I used to when my nose worked, I used to be able to smell like in certain circumstances, let's say and this depends on where the scrape is, right? What the ground is like, how dense the ground is, how the balls of dirt that come up when they scrape, are they dried out, are they wet, are they still wet, are they still more like you start looking at things like that, like when this scrape was actually made, that would give you more of a timeline of how fresh it is. But whether and let's say if you had rain or you had any other instances like that, you can start to, it's just like a rub, you can start to nitpick the little things, and you can take things that might like give you an inclination it was a big buck, but you're never really going to know 100%, like, oh, this scrape was made at 1 a.m and this is only active at 1 a.m. That's the biggest bunch of bullshit I've ever fucking heard. You can't,
Right.
like, there's no way
Yeah.
you can determine that. There's
Yeah.
now you can tell if a scrape is fresh, like, oh, this has been hit in the last 24 hours, or this has been hit. Shit, like I've gotten to places, or I've hunted, got down from the stand, checked the scrape, and I'm like, dude, this was hit right before I was here. It's just so fresh, man. Like I can still
Yeah.
smell like the grass
I've
dug
been
up.
there. Uh huh. I had
So
one buck, man. He just shredded. Like, he must have had like 10 or 15. It was during the rut, and he had like 10 or 15 scrapes lit up on this one little path of woods where I killed him at. And I
yeah,
was like, oh my God, like he had to do all that right before I
yeah,
got in here. And he
yeah.
just
Or
was probably bringing her back.
there's even characteristics of like you see those like gnarly licking branches that are just fucking just worked over. Well, you can tell the difference, you know, what if that was broke 5 hours ago or if it was broke fucking 5 days ago,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
those type of things. But whether or not like to get like more of an inkling of like whether that buck's gonna come in there in the middle of the night, or that's a whole different thing.
Gotcha. Sweet. Well, I got one final question and I'm gonna let you go, man. I know you got to hunt in the morning. But if you could give any of our listeners like one piece of advice to help them kill a buck in like this October frame, what part of the month would you tell them to hunt and you feel like it would be the most successful? And location wise, where would you try to put somebody at if you had like, you know, a day or something along those lines, or like a scenario?
I don't know if I could pick a date. Now, if we're talking early October,
No, that's why I wanted to ask you, like, what you prefer the most. What's your favorite time in October? And what would be like a good scenario that you could maybe paint for a guy to be
it's
successful, or a tip maybe for
it's so
like, hey,
it's so
do this or that.
it's so tough to pick a favorite because I like my favorite time is all the times, but they're totally different, right? Like,
You got to hunt
I
them
mean,
differently.
yeah, and like if I was talking on a giving somebody like advice, well,
Let's
I
say
would
middle October, because this is
I
coming
would
out, you know,
I would
tomorrow.
Yeah, because I
So
would more. I
that
would
way
more
somebody's got
advise.
like a week or so to plan for this tip. Let's just call it a mid-October tip.
Um, let's see here. So, because you're gonna start to um mid
Find where they're
October.
eating, find where they're sleeping, and kill
Yeah, yeah. Real simple. No, yeah, because I would probably go. I mean, like, dude, late October scrape hunting is insane, and it can be some freaking um, really eventful sits. They're easy. Like I would say for somebody who's not really too keened in on or not too experienced, like late October scrape hunting is a pretty easy like entry. Like it's pretty easy to find scrapes. It's pretty basic to set up on those and like sometimes it can require some camping out, but like your first question is like, "Oh, when's the best time to?" I can't give you a day. I would more so advise you to play the weather. If you can hit the cold fronts, if you can hit a cold front the first week of October, it could be just as good as November 3rd. Like like fucking shit gets rowdy when it gets cold, especially when it's been hot. So those fronts, like if you can watch the weather, hit those fronts. If you can locate scrapes and then hunt those in proximity to other things like transition or food, or if you could hunt those like after a rain or during a front, like those are really good, like low hanging fruit type items. But the biggest piece of advice would be to just scout like early. Scouting is important,
Yeah.
super important, probably more important than hunting, just because it's really like they're so in a pattern and they're not like out really laying down a bunch of new shit, not market territory, and it's before that happens. So
Mhm.
like scouting and putting really diving in all the areas and the facets of the ground to find out where they're at is going to put you in the best spot to kill them. And then once that starts to transition, once the temps start dropping, and then once the bucks start getting a little bit more rowdy, they're starting to kind of not be so patterned, like not their you know same thing, routine every day. They're going to start to expand a little
Venture
bit.
out a little bit.
Yeah, start to lay down a lot more territorial sign and things like that, and those can be really really good to capitalize on. And that can
Awesome,
happen
man.
earlier too.
Yeah, it's just all about getting out there and scouting and hunting fresh sign and not sitting on it for too long, right?
Yeah, yep, for sure.
Sweet. Well, is there any news you have like for your channel or for Lone Wolf that you want
Um,
to update anybody on or
yeah, I mean I've been talking about this for a while. I got a lot of requests to do it for so long, but the Dying Breed Bowhunter YouTube page is now up and live. I've been trying to feed videos to that. I'm doing an in-season vlog. I think we're gonna drop an episode tomorrow. I got my bow pickup on there. So anything you want to see regarding like me, what I'm getting into, my hunts and stuff like that, just head over to that YouTube page. Dying Breed Bowhunter. Um, Subscribe over there, and then yeah, anything custom gear, like usually Instagram, YouTube. Um, you can find anything over there. But yeah, it's pretty much it,
yeah,
man. Just trying to get out in the timber and
yeah, not work too much, get some deer under
yeah,
the on the ground. Yeah,
yeah, trying at least.
yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, Cody, thanks again, brother. I really appreciate you doing this and jumping on here out in the field. I hope you have a killer time in Illinois and knock one down and keep us posted, man.
Hell yeah, man. We'll do.
All right, brother. Well, till next time, I'll talk to you.
Yep. Have a good one.
See